envision 3 female attorneys coming together to have our voices heard. Each of us would have different opinions, different passions, different backgrounds, and different views. Although we are different and unique, we are able to come together to discuss our experiences, navigating through the legal profession and this thing called life. Now, the vision has come alive, and we invite you each and every week to listen to us as we talk about what's trending in the news and our legal insight, tackle real-life issues that affect not only us as attorneys, but us as women of color. Disclaimer: this podcast is intended to provide entertainment and general information. The information provided and the views given are not intended to constitute legal advice and should not be relied upon as legal representation. All views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever we are affiliated with now or will be affiliated with in the future. Hey guys, it's your girl Brandy, and welcome back to another episode on No Further Questions. We hope everybody is enjoying their summer. I know the kids are out and probably, y'all nerves. But hey, it's summertime. Before we get started, let me introduce y'all. Let my girls introduce themselves. Sam Fraze.
Hey y'all, not only are the kids out, but the sun's out, fun's out, buns out. Hot girl summer. Look at
food out season.
Excited to be here, excited for the summer. And guess what? It's Pride Month. Pride Month.
It is.
Break out your rainbows.
T-Hut.
It's June. Hey guys. Summer's not my favorite time of the year because it's so hot and people don't want to wear like deodorant and stuff. So
I feel like that's a rest by case.
Well, I'm gonna say it up front. Take a shower. Use deodorant. It's your friend.
You can still wear your mask. Beyonce wore her mask to the game, so that means masks are still in.
I'm still wearing my mask.
You can still wear your mask.
Let me tell you.
Vaccinations are in too.
Well, as Sam stated, it is Pride Month. So June is also known as Pride Month. And we are doing an episode on in celebration of the month. So we have a wonderful guest, Ms. Kendra Walker. Please introduce yourself and tell our listeners about you.
Oh, wow. Okay. So my name, as they stated, is Kendra Walker. I'm Executive Vice President of Pride Houston. Do more than that, marketing. I'm over there, events. I'm also their treasurer. I also sit on the board of the Montrose Center, which is one of the largest health advocacy groups for the LGBTQ community. And I sit within their philanthropy department. I also own a group, Lesbians of Color, that is geared toward the health and advancement of queer women of color. And we throw great parties, just, put that out there. And by day, I'm actually a software developer in energy trading and risk management. I know it sounds very boring, but that's what I am by day. So that's me. And I'm happy to be here today to talk to you guys about my community. So.
Well, thank you for being a guest on our show. We really appreciate it. And we are here. So let's dive in. Let's talk about it. So, Kendra, let's start with the basics because there's a lot of letters that we need to understand. So take your time and educate us. What is, and I could be messing this up, so definitely, correct me if I'm wrong. But what does LGBTQ plus mean?
Okay, so
and if I'm missing out some letters, then let us know too.
So LGBTQ plus, L is for lesbian, G is for gay men, B is for bisexual, T is for transgender, Q is for queer or questioning, and then the plus. Basically, because sexuality is so diversified, especially gender expressions are very diversified as well, intersex, asexual, and then they put a plus on the end of that, right? Pansexual, and it just goes on and on. So as I think I was telling Samantha earlier, most people use LGBTQ plus for the community, but there is a kind of generational divide. You have the younger generation who will use queer community because they feel like that's all encompassing. But as we know, queer was used as a slur back in, Stonewall when we were being really persecuted. So the older generation really doesn't rock with the word queer as much. However, generation to generation, it changes, it evolves. So the younger generation has reclaimed that. I actually consider myself a queer woman of color. So I would say I lean more on the side of the new generation, only because, even within lesbians, you have lipstick lesbians, chapstick lesbians, stud, doms, films. It goes on and on when it's all just different variations of your expression. So
then,
wait, I have a question now.
Oh, I have to answer.
Because you said transgender, right? Transsexuals are, wait.
They don't use the word
wrong.
transsexual anymore.
We're off transsexuals. We're transgender.
Not with the ED.
Transgender.
Yes.
okay.
But wouldn't that be gender and not your sexual preference? So why is that included in the sexuality portion?
Right. So if you look at gender expression, that more closely aligns with sexual expression as well. You have, how can I say, trans men that are still interested in men, and we would consider them gay. And we consider our, the LGBT community will say our trans siblings, because we do realize there's a difference between sexuality and gender expression. However, you guys, not you guys, but society persecutes us just the same. And so we are allies to each other's causes. Our common causes are accepting of people and diversity and inclusion. And so if you want to throw that in there, straight people, on the spectrum too, because they are varied as well. There's a whole song, I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It. So I'm just saying, we consider gender expression as very much a part of our community as sexual expression or your sexuality. So they are part of the community, and there's just, no question about it. That's how that we accept that.
Okay, I just always wondered how did gender work intertwined with this.
Well, if you look at it, as far as fighting for causes and the Stonewall riots, it started with a transgender woman of color. That was what the Stonewall riots was about. She is the one who threw the bricks. It started with a riot, and she was the one who led it. So they have always been part of our community and always considered as our trans siblings and brothers, sisters and brothers.
I feel like y'all are going through the same thing that Black people went through, and eventually y'all will just settle down. Like, we went through like Negro, then Negroid, then African American, and then people tried to like move towards people of color, and now we're just back to Black. Just call me plain old Black. Just Black.
Yeah, and you still have some people who prefer people of color because we concentrate on the African American or the Black struggle, but when you look at our Native Americans or indigenous people to this land, they go through the same thing. When you look at other minorities, trust me, any skin that is not pale, you usually go through the same struggle. Biracial, same thing. You will find out that a lot of your Hispanics go through a struggle as well. So I feel like there is persecution. A lot of times, believe it or not, minorities, I hate to say it, persecute other minorities, which is why a lot of people don't like the people of color. And they like to say, Black when you're dealing with the Black community, because not everybody's struggle is the same. And, you know,
Yeah, I feel like with that, no. Like I feel like everyone tries to piggyback off the Black people struggle because ours is the most oppressed and went on for the longest.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so when, yes, indigenous people, they had their own oppression. Asian people, stop Asian hate. You have your own oppression. But when we start trying to compare stuff to slavery to 400 years,
I mean, there is no comparison, but in today's society, when we start talking about like the oppression and systemic racism, it mostly affects Black people. I think everybody knows that systemically, red line districts, things of that nature, still in play, really. You know, I was reading the other day about the whole redlining and how the railroad tracks were actually put in certain places to separate the Black community from other places. And so it will be easier to box you in. How do I know that? Leaving a friend's house, guess what? Train got stuck on the track, couldn't go east, couldn't go west, couldn't go north. I was like, they could bomb the whole neighborhood and we wouldn't be able to get up out of here. And this is in, 2021. So I get it, but I want to be, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, especially when it comes to the queer community, it is, we can't kind of like talk about trans women of color and queer women of color without mentioning just kind of like all of the oppression. Not that all of them are equal, but everybody's struggle is really for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let's just be real, there is no struggle comparable to the brutality in the years of slavery of Black people, or even the systemic things that have been put in place that keep us oppressed today.
but even with like within the, I'm just gonna say queer community, don't throw stones.
No, I won't.
Even within the queer community, there's prejudice and racism where
Very much
they
so.
don't want Black people in the white gay bars, or
Very much so. Very
or
much
like
so.
Black trans women are murdered
At a higher
at
rate
higher
than
rates.
any other demographic within our spectrum. Very much so. But I don't think you can equate, like when you say, how can I put it? When you say our struggle is going through what, how can I say, what slavery, I don't even equate the queer community struggle with slavery. I don't think they're comparable. But when you're talking about oppression in general, then yeah, everybody's oppressed to a certain degree. But if you want to compare the struggle, like on a degree, I don't even think the queer community has faced what Black people have faced. So I don't even equate the civil rights movement with the struggle to basically be accepted as far as the queer community. I call them all human rights. And so I guess that's where my more focus is, the human rights of everyone to exist and to be accepted, as long as what I'm doing is not affecting what's in your what's in your neighborhood. But in my mind, there is no struggle that will ever be comparable or to the brutality. I mean, come on, our history was lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who's your great 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 grandfather? Exactly. If we knew our grandparents to be good, it's just that we lost a lot of history, a lot of identity. And when you want to keep people lost, what do you go for? Their identity, where they came from, facts about themselves. You tell them that their story started as slavery when that's not where our story started. So, yeah.
I can appreciate that because sometimes you do hear in the queer community people compare that struggle or their struggle with the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
And although I believe that there is a form of oppression and that people are mistreated in that community, I also believe that when people see you, that is up to you to decide whether you want to reveal whether you are gay or lesbian or trans. When you are African American, you don't have that choice to decide, I'm not going to tell nobody I'm black today. I'm going to just walk in.
I mean, and I get that point, but also I can tell you now, some of us can't hide it. I mean, and even if they weren't, you have that discrimination where you look at a person's clothes and what they have on, and you assume that they are of a certain community or of a certain lifestyle, when really you have no clue, and they get discriminated against just the same. So when people compare the two, the most that I can say or think about is maybe they're trying to forge a common ground to, how can I say, let you know or try to reach so that you can feel just kind of how they feel going through oppression. So they look at you, they say, okay, you're black, you went through slavery. So that's their way of reaching out. And just like you say, that is offensive to some, they get it. But even within our community, even though we went through slavery and all of that, let's just be very clear. The Black church is the most discriminating, homophobic body I have ever witnessed in my life. And I'm a preacher's daughter. So exactly. You think of people who went through as much as we did would understand any form of oppression and would not turn it around on anybody else. But we do. You have discrimination even within the queer community. Just to be honest with you, you have certain gay men who believe in, very, how can I say, astute, business-like attire where, they you wouldn't even tell every day. And they don't believe in all of the twerking or even coming out in the little Speedos. They don't believe in that. And so they discriminate against them. They think, you are too gay. You know what I'm saying? If that's a word. So my focus is really on diversity, equity, inclusion, no matter who you are. Because if we can get to that point, then as far as understanding each other, we can. Now, as far as systemic oppression of Black people, that's a whole nother conversation that you really have to go back into redlining, schools, opportunities. Like this whole system was built to just basically keep Black people in their place. And they used the success story of a few to say, look, there's no more oppression. I mean, when Barack became president, that's one of the things that said racism is dead. And then came the next one.
So I have a question that, like, more of a definition question, because I know we've been saying this too. But what does it mean to be queer? Like, what is queer, and what is it like different? I guess from like lesbian and gay.
And so, queer to me encompasses the whole spectrum. So whether you're lesbian, whether you're gay, whether you're bisexual, whether you're trans, whether you are intersex, asexual, pansexual, questioning, it just encompasses the whole spectrum. So you don't have, because if someone else wants to express their gender or their sexuality in a different way, then we'll add another letter. And some people say, hey, we keep adding letters as many times as we want, and that's just fine. And some will say, okay, well, queer community, just to make it easier understandable, everybody's included, and that's just how they think. But there is no authority, I can say, on this community. There really isn't. Most of the time, my brother used to tell me we need to hear, hush, and hug. And that means God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Hear the person, just hear them out, and sometimes hush, and that's how you start to understand. You don't have to get it. You don't have to accept it. Just hear it and put yourself, kind of like in their shoes. And that, I think, is where the conversation starts.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. When and why did we decide to change straight people to cisgender? Why did we feel that was necessary? And if you aren't cis, why do you get to change that?
So for me, I feel like trans men are men, trans women are women. I think those labels came outside of our community. I call them men, I call them women. I mean, I don't see any difference between a trans woman and a cisgender woman as far as I'm concerned, because I'm not concerned with what's in your underwear. That is of no concern to me. You say you're a woman, you're a woman. But I feel like society has made us label each other. Same reason we're labeled black and white or Caucasian in this. I mean, that's just what society has forced us into, class groups. That's literally our whole society is built on basically putting people in different classes. Even if you look at other societies, they were based on the peasants and whether you were, of royalty. Classification and trying to group people has been around from the Philistines to the Jews since before Christ. I don't see it changing, but where it started, who decided, but because society did not accept trans men as being men, so now you have, okay, cisgender men, trans men. When to me, you're all men.
But I thought that it was just trans men and trans women. But I feel like the LGBTQ plus community made up this cisgender, and they didn't tell none of the straight people, like all of a sudden cisgender became this popular thing. And it was like, apparently I'm a cisgender woman and I didn't get the memo.
So like, if you were to meet a trans woman, would you acknowledge her as a woman?
I will.
Or would you acknowledge her as a trans woman?
I will acknowledge any individual by what they want to be acknowledged by. Meaning, if you want me to call you him, I will call you him. If you want me to call you her, I will call you her.
And you will be the minority.
Nowadays, because you get in trouble, okay? Because some people want them and they, and I don't understand who's with you on that.
Who are you going to get in trouble with? Because by far and large, the LGBTQ, let's say legislative authorities, like right now, while we're here to talk about this bill, there's no bill except, abortion for women, right? That is trying to limit your options to healthcare because you are a woman.
Yeah.
All we can think about is, abortion as one of the limiting ones. But yet this
contraception.
But you have access. You have access to, when I say it's all about reproductive services, but no one is trying to limit your care to breast cancer treatment.
They tried to say that having a baby was a pre-existing condition, so you couldn't get health care. That's not for insurance. Women can't have babies. That's for women who were born women.
So, and medical science is caught up. So trans women can't have babies. They've done a uterine transplant. You can, medical science is everything. My thing is, at the end of the day, I can tell you now, cis means same. All it means is the same gender that you were assigned. And I can't speak for the trans community because I'm not of trans experience. I'm a queer and a color, but I will tell you, I'll leave that alone. But I will tell you this. When society starts to accept all men equal as men and all women equal as men, you won't have a cis or a trans. You won't.
I'm glad you defined that when you said about cis, because people need to understand what does that mean? So cis is, you have the same.
Cis means your gender expression is the same as your biological sex. So you express yourself as a woman, you present yourself as a woman, your biological sex is female. And then even when you come to, let's say, intersex, Gender expression is not as concrete as you would like to think. Let's talk about intersex. You have a person right now who is literally, she has ovaries, she has a womb, but she produces more testosterone than normal. And they told her she couldn't compete in sports. So you cannot, you see what I'm saying? That what do you call that? She's born a natural woman. Her body naturally produces more testosterone, but yet she's discriminated against. She can't compete in the sport of her biological sex. And when you talk about intersex, women who have female presenting genitalia, but don't have a uterus. So are they trans? Are they cis? I wish we would just drop all labels and accept the person for how they say. And let's just be real. There are women who were born biologically female who still can't have babies, who still can't carry a child or get pregnant, who are barren. Are they now less than a woman?
No, but I feel like it overcomplicates things. Because one, I do feel like we should get rid of like Bob is Bob, Jane is Jane, Sue is Sue,
Exactly.
Shaquila is Shaquila. Like I feel like we should do that, but then also I think there's a difference in being born without being able to have children and being, I think we have to decide, well, then what makes you a woman or what makes you a man? Because what 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 bothers me, or I shouldn't say bothers me, it doesn't bother me, but to me it's hypocrisy that if a white person says, I feel like I was born a black person, everybody would go nuts. Everyone would be up in arms. Cultural appropriation, culture vulture, cancel them. You know, racism, racism, racism. But if a man says, I feel like, or a person who was born a man now says, I feel like I was born a woman. This is who I really am. You call me Jane. Then everyone says, okay, what is now appropriate? We call him Jane. So if we're gonna call this person that now wants to be called Jane, Jane, then why can't people pick other areas in which they feel that they identify and it be
You
fine?
can pick whatever you want. Society, but you're asking, listen, I can tell you now. White women want to be black, cancel them if you want to. That's where your buy-in dollar goes. Trans people get canceled every day. Gay people get canceled every day, and people get up in arms about it. So it cuts both ways. At the end of the day, for me, I could care less. That Rachel Dozo situation had no bearing on my life, didn't bother me one bit. Not one. Not one.
I
And,
appreciate it,
and she
Rachel.
was very, from what people say, effective at her job. So I could care less. Personally, did I think it is a bad look? Yeah. Did I think it may have been offensive to me as a black woman? Yeah. But at the end of the day, did she get $1 million for for pretending to be black? And I didn't get it. If anything, she just chose to put herself through a lot of turmoil for no reason. Nothing to do with me.
But
Nothing to do with
why going back to, you said,
Well, I was going to say, I think that you brought up a really great point when you talked about what was offensive and how Rachel was offensive for
yeah.
trying to be a black woman. And I think as a born woman, it is offensive for someone to portray to be a woman. When
I was born a woman, and I'm not offended.
no,
So
no, I'm saying as a natural born woman, and I think that that's where there is a good majority of people that come through and say it, that there are things that as a natural born woman that we have to go through, and we don't get to choose if we want to go through it. You know, starting at 10 to 14, a friend will come and visit you. And
not every woman gets their period. That's how
but
one woman found out she was
majority
she
of
was
women
21 and she didn't get her period. You can say majority, but you cannot. There are intersex people in this community. So are you going to say they're less than a woman?
I haven't said anything because I wasn't able to finish.
No, I'm just saying, if you use that definition, what do you say for intersex that were born that way? Are they less than a woman?
Kendra, let Taria finish real quick. Let her get her point out.
I just would like, to know, like, what do you say to those that?
I'm gonna go ahead and let you finish.
It was just a question. Like, I'm always curious when people go down that path. Like, if I'm born a certain way, then am I also less than a woman because I didn't get a cycle or because I couldn't have kids?
Well, let me ask you this. You said that as a Black woman, what Rachel did was somewhat offensive. What was offensive about what she did?
So let me rephrase that. I was offended. Offensive and offended is really the person. That is a personal thing.
So why were
you offended? Tell you that not a lot of people. I was offended only because if you could have done the same thing, and she actually, how can I say, misled. I don't believe in anybody misleading anyone. But if I live my life as a woman, if that's my expression, and I'm not going home at night living my life as a man, if that's my fine, then that's what it is. I have the same problem with Candace Owens, who actually sued and it had the NAACP in a discrimination suit, only to turn around and say there is no discrimination when literally you use the system. So yeah, that is offensive to me, and I can guarantee you another person, it would not have offended them at all.
Right. So what you're saying is that it wasn't offensive necessarily that she was portraying herself out to say, like, if she had come out and said, I was born white, but I identify as Black, instead of just kind of fraudulently holding herself out as something that she wasn't, was the offensive.
That was for me.
Okay.
For somebody else, totally different. Okay, but I can tell you now, I lost no sleep over Rachel. I didn't even follow the story. Could have cared less. She could have kept her job, and I probably still wouldn't have cared. Only if like that job was meant for a Black woman.
Well, I think Rachel may not be the greatest example just because she had some other things going on, like some welfare fraud.
You didn't have people come after her. These Instagram models who are just as bright light as they want to be, but who darken their skin for models. Kim Kardashian ain't been canceled yet. So I'm just saying it's everywhere, all over. What's offensive?
But she never said she identified as being.
But when you talk about cultural appropriation, and I think someone used that word, isn't that the same thing? I mean,
that's what I'm saying, though, is that if an individual were to come out and to say, people don't do it because they don't want to be placed in, cultural appropriation or misappropriation, right? But the reason why,
and it's accepted.
I disagree. I have yet to see someone who said, hey, I was born this culture, but I now identify as a different culture. I have yet to see anyone.
And I have yet to see someone murdered because they said, let's not pretend that there is not a real threat to violence.
Absolutely.
About saying that. And I've never seen someone murdered, even, probably spit at, because there's not this mass exodus of white women who want to be Black, who pretending to be Black women. They might like us, they might like the skin and be exotic and all that, but this is not a cultural problem. People are not being murdered for it. No lives are at stake. Nobody's committing suicide because they just itching to be Black.
Right.
But you do have people who are murdered for being trans. You do have people who are committing suicide because they can't get the care that they want. You do have people who are being committed. So I hate to say it because, you know, they consider themselves, that's what they are. And that's just what I believe. So
let me be clear. I don't think that the trans woman or trans man struggle is an easy one, nor do I think that necessarily that they should be treated any different for whatever you, whichever way, trans woman, non-trans woman, trans man, non-trans man, you're still a human being at the end of the day. My only question was, I feel as though society, not you, but society picks and chooses what is appropriate and when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. And I feel as though other groups of individuals who have come out, who have said, I identify a certain way. There are people who say that they are sexually attracted to objects. Okay. But everyone, if I were to tell you, hey, this woman loves a roller coaster, people would be like, oh, she's mentally unwell. Or if someone were to say, I identify as Black, even though I was born white, it would be a problem. And so I just think that as a society, we pick and choose what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I don't see, when it comes to like race versus sex and gender, why can someone pick their sexual preference or gender, but when people want to pick their race or they feel more inclined to a certain culture, that is then frowned upon. But in no way am I saying the trans struggle is an easy one, because it's not. They're murdered.
And I guess you feel as though they picked or they chose. And I guess
not necessarily that you pick or you chose, but I feel as though if I were to say tomorrow that in my true self, I've always felt that I was a white person. I've always felt that I identified as white. Nobody would give me grace. Everyone would say, no, you were born this way. This is who you are. You're not proud of your culture. So it's not necessarily picking, but I feel as though some people say on this spectrum, you don't pick. This is how you were born. This is who you are. But then when others try to do that on a different side, then it's kind of like ridiculed or made fun of.
But that's when your personal choice comes in, right? You don't have to be the one who ridicules. You cannot control what any of these corporations, societies, or the mass mobs get together and decide they want to cancel. Mm-hmm. Like, no control over that. All you can control is how you react when someone comes across you that is different or has chosen a different way. So to that, I say, who is society? We make up society. Now, you can be in the majority of society that believes that, hey, you need to be canceled because of this or that. And let's just be very clear. I just want to correct some. Queer community did not create the term cisgender. It is actually something that the medical community uses. Nothing to do with us. But but I guess they needed something to differentiate, and that is the problem. I can guarantee you if you and I can't guarantee you because I am not, like I said, I am not of trans experience. I can just, from the people who I've talked to, those that I know intimately, if they were accepted by women as women, I don't even think this would be a discussion. But because somebody felt the need to differentiate them from others, others came up with a term. We said, okay.
Gotcha.
What else are we going to do?
Since we are talking about the trans experience, let's go in and talk about and I know you and I have talked about this in regard to the new Texas law. I don't necessarily think that it has passed because I was researching it. I think it was in the Senate and it was supposed to go through the House. So I don't think it's actually a law at this time. But
it's the third iteration of the same bill.
Because it got shot down. Because at first they were trying to say like what calling parents child abusers.
Right. First they got as a child abuse law, and they were going to throw the parents in jail. Well,
yeah. And so now
we're shut down. And then it got revived as another iteration. This current iteration says, okay, we got a better chance at punishing the doctors and taking away their insurance and their license for providing affirming care. And that is just, one is just morally wrong on so many levels. Men get breast cancer. So they're literally saying you can't give a man or someone 18 a mastectomy if it's for transgender affirming care. But how would you know? So now I need to open up my diagnosis that is supposed to be protected by HIPAA to prove to you that I need a mastectomy for something other than trans affirming care. I don't even think it's constitutional, but this is Texas. And I don't even think they're passing it to protect anybody. This is Texas. We already know it's to score political points with a certain demographic, get the money and the donors flowing in. I don't think anybody believes that this bill is aimed at protecting children. Their parents protect them. Their doctors protect them. And you have to go through, especially if you're a youth, you have to go through mental health counseling. This is not a process where you just go to the doctor and say, give me some pills, I think I'm a girl. That it doesn't work like that at all. And no doctors out here performing that. Go ahead.
We have an article on this, so we want to show the article where it says Texas Senate passes ban on gender affirming medical care, so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Sam, you wanted to chime in, so go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and this particular type of legislation is gross to me. Like, it's disgusting for the simple fact that if you are going to ban certain types of surgery, why are you banning gender, affirming surgery, but allowing for 16-year-olds to still get nose jobs, breast jobs, boob jobs, as long as their parents say it's fine? Nobody has a problem with it. Like liposuction, all these things that I feel like are just cosmetic surgery, not necessarily surgery to help this individual come into their full selves, right? But then it also, for people, this is a very slippery slope, in my opinion. When you start to use laws, and we've seen it from Black people, right, or from any minorities, when you start to use like medical procedures to oppress people, that's a slippery slope, in my opinion.
And there are no doctors getting behind this law. This law is not rooted in any type of science whatsoever. And if you look at it, there are no doctors out here performing gender reassignment surgery on 12 and 13-year-olds. It's just blatantly false. What we're talking about is, mostly what they're talking about is hormone suppression therapy. That if started, and just to be real, adolescence, before you hit puberty, there is literally no difference between boys and girls as far as, puberty makeup until you come into that hormone and you start to produce things like that. And that's when most kids start, if that's what they choose. They start around, 10, 11, 12. But, you have others who I have heard of those as young as 5 starting hormone therapy. But I would trust the doctor and their parents I don't think there is any parent out here forcing hormone therapy on their child. The statistics don't even support that. Of all who have started, hormone therapy in adolescence, only 13% changed their decision when they got older. And they changed their decision because of discrimination and because of they felt a danger to themselves. So they decided to stop their hormone therapy, not because they changed their mind and decided they weren't who they were. So when you look at the statistics, they're saying they're doing this to protect children because later they may change their mind, but the data doesn't support it.
But I feel like if you're going to do that to protect children, then there are a lot of psychotropic drugs that they throw on kids all the time that have long-term effects that people will gladly, I represent a lot of kids in CPS, and the first thing, as soon as a behavioral problem pops up, they want to pump them up with all these psychotropic drugs, which I'm not a fan of unless you actually need it and it's supported with some therapy and with med management. But that seems to be fine. Like, oh, if you want to put your kid on antidepressants when they're 11, that seems to be okay, which I'm not saying if they need it, but it's not like with hormone therapy or hormone suppression, the child just wakes up and is like, I think I want to suppress my hormones today and stop puberty or change, or, like you have to go through, it's a process and it's a long process. It's not just a one time you go to the doctor and we write you a prescription, although psychotropic medications, depending upon who's your physician, could, have that effect. Or could
I mean, on the grand scheme of things, it's between the child and the parent.
And their doctor. And their
right.
doctor.
I don't think
like any other.
In
some states, a 14-year-old can go get an abortion without having any parental consent whatsoever. At a certain age, your parents can't even go back there with you when you get ready to have a pap smear, because your privacy is protected. And now you're going to put a legislator between me, my doctor, and my parent. It seems very, and it's just at the end of the day, the science doesn't support it. The data doesn't support it. So I think most people know what it's about, but there's a certain demographic. When this bill came up, the donor dollars start flowing. In rural areas where there is solidly one demographic, they're all for it. We have a group of legislators and sometimes politicians who literally are, how can I say, they want a job. They don't want to do what's best for the people. They will vote to keep a job, not what's best for Texans or even best for kids or healthcare. And that's been stated over and over. So I always say the key to this, we get outraged at certain bills, but if we don't get out there and vote, if we're not at the town halls, if we're not at the commissioner's court, if we're not making noise, if we're not getting involved in the process, then it really doesn't matter how outraged we are.
Do we know who's backing this bill?
It's the Republican. His name is Bill something. I forgot.
Introduced
the article that we have. It's because he's the one that's backing and said that they're doing it to protect the children. So it's like they have to look at and protect the children. But when I was reading about it, I'm like, protect the children, that's, again, like we said, that's between the parent and the doctor. So
yeah.
Well, last weekend it was an active shooter in North Park Mall. So what about these gun laws?
That's a topic for another day. We'll be talking about that next episode.
Money. It's money.
I also want to know who is backing, like, who is, I know you say money, but who is putting funding behind? I guess I'm just naive or just, I don't understand. I understand why you want to keep guns on the street, to make money. right to sell guns, ammunition, things. What are you gaining by oppressing individuals from becoming who they want to be, or not allowing for parents to allow for their kids to assist them? Like, what's to be gained from this? I don't see how that transitions to money.
It is everybody's belief system. So let's just kind of start with one of the legislators I was reading. She just spoke out. She was like, we have to protect God's will. That was her reason for voting yes for the bill. I'm pretty sure she's from a rural community made of mostly churchgoers. They keep her in office. They donate to her. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do believe there are some honest politicians out there who literally take it to heart. They vote their conscience. They may even vote against their constituents for what's good for the better state. But you have some who want to stay in office and they want to push their agenda. And who knows why? I mean, people, they have cults, whole cults out here. Who knows why? But they have an agenda that they believe so strongly in. I'm not going to knock, them for believing, but you don't legislate morality, I guess, in my eyes. We've tried it with prohibition laws and everything else. And where has it gotten us? It always fails. Because at the end of the day, as long as what I am doing does not hinder your life, affect you in any way, shape, or form, why is there a law against it? It's not hurting you. It's not hurting society. But we have laws, out the wazoo because of people wanting to legislate their belief system when laws are just supposed to be made to protect its citizens.
Yeah, Kendra, I forgot you to drop that bomb about the black church, that grenade. You kind of like dropped it.
Yeah, and I'm a preacher's kid, so I know. I didn't hear the conversations in church.
I don't feel like that's a fair. I don't feel like that's fair because there are other groups who take the same stance. I feel like sometimes the black church, not saying that there aren't black churches who are homophobic, or I have a question about homophobia, but I'll get to that in a second, but who, preach hate speech. But I think that there are just as many black churches, especially now today, who preach love and don't preach that message. So I don't know.
We just gonna have to agree to disagree on that. And I've been to all the conferences, grew up in it. The black community, let's just be real. I know a lot of people feel like we are a very conservative community. We are a very religious community just by culture. We always have been. And I do believe, I'm not going to say, maybe I shouldn't have said they were the most homophobic group out there, but let's not mince words. The black church is very discriminatory in nature. And no, they are not preaching love the sinner, hate the sin. They are whole kicking people out of congregations once they find out who you are. Now, you do have churches who are going to turn a blind eye because they like the choir director, they like the organ, they like the person who can sing. So you have a lot of churches that turn a blind eye to it. But yeah, and yes, there are some very love affirming black churches. I give you that. I just don't think they're in the majority, and we can agree to disagree.
And until we've gone to all of those black churches and confirmed that they're not loving and supportive, we can't make a blanket statement like that. And so on behalf of a black church-going member, tithe-paying member, I'm going to say that they're not all like that. So I'm going to speak for the
they're not all like that. And okay.
I'm going to speak for the black church today.
Disagree.
That's fine. And I'm going to speak on behalf of the black church. So the black church members don't come after our show.
Well,
I don't
no,
want them to come after your show.
I'm non-denominational, so Joel Osteen,
Some of them will
Joel
probably
Osteen is
not
very
even want
much.
you. Some of them probably wouldn't even want you having me here. So, like I said, I think if you read studies, you will see, by and large, that's just, and I've just accepted it. It is what it is. They have tons of documentaries on it. They have tons of surveys and studies done. And like I said, data can be misconstrued for any point. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree. I do not believe the majority of Black churches are loving and affirming of those of trans experience or the queer community at large. I don't see it, but
So Kendra, so if we do a part 2 and we have a Black loving church on, will you come back on and we can have a whole new
sure
conversation?
will. We can have a whole conversation. I'll bring some that will tell you,
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the
yeah,
type
no.
of
I
conversation
just
you
thought
want
about
to
it.
read. And church going, tithe paying, there's, we're all, I don't know if you all are church going, whatever.
But Kendra, I do have a question for you.
Mhm.
This is going to be a very elementary question. And you can say I'm ignorant if you want to. But
No, I don't.
but no, I really have always wanted to ask this question because I've never understood why is it called homophobia instead of just hatred or discrimination or prejudice or not racism but bigotry. Why is it because to me homophobia means that you are scared of these people, and these people are not some of the people who say hateful things and um just disgusting behavior, murderers. All of these is hate speech or a hate crime if you kill someone. That is not, oh, you're phobic, you're scared of this person, which phobia, that's what it means when you have a phobia. So why did it go from homophobia instead of just pure hatred, like pure bigotry?
You have a point, because not all hate speech is homophobic. They're just hating against those that are different. But there are some that are very fearful. They're fearful that you're going to come for the kids. You're going to transform the kids. They are fearful of that you're going to infiltrate their spaces or shove something down their throat. They are fearful. I can tell you now, which is hilarious. It's not hilarious, actually sad, when certain parents meet gay men. They hold their kids a little closer because they're fearful that, and for a while, I hate to say it, the queer community was seen as, almost close to pedophilia. I mean, it was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You have women, and I will say this, they find out you're gay and all of a sudden they think you're super attracted to them and fearful that you're going to come on to them when you could literally, they're not a thought in your mind. So in that case, when you can be both hateful and homophobic at the same time. But I will give you that point that not all hate speech is homophobic. So when did it become that way? I don't know. I think it just became easier than trying to find out your motives for saying this to just say it's homophobic speech. But you're right. It could be homophobia. It could be hate. It could be just that you're a miserable person. And I just don't think people have that time to decipher it. At the end of the day, it's just wrong. So whether you call it homophobic hate, I think when we get caught up on kind of like, oh, well, they're not homophobic, they're just hateful. What difference does it make? Is they kept you from getting the job. They kicked you out of their place of business. They won't serve you. So at the end of the day, call it homophobic hate. I won't get caught up in that, because what I'm more looking at, like I said, the labels, this, that, understand the letters. You don't need to understand letters when you are dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It wouldn't matter. what I identify as or who I am, because you don't care. You're looking at me for my character. You're looking at me for my accomplishments in whatever area that I'm bringing to what we are discussing, or a job. Can I pay my rent? And if you didn't care about the alphabets, any of that, there will be no need for any of the alphabets, because diversity, equity, inclusion, and then we wouldn't have any of this. But that's just not the world that we live in. So I definitely will, agree with you that not all hate speech is homophobic.
I just always felt like homophobic, to me, had less teeth than calling it for what it is. Like, hate speech is protected by the Constitution. Hate crimes are protected by the Department of Justice. So I just think calling things for what they are, to me, gives more bite to what you're actually doing. Some people are not scared, okay? They hate these people for who they are, and target these people for who they are. And I just think that we as a society should call it for what it is. That's just me in my own part of the community. I just think we should call it for what it is. And
I get it, but I know if you talk to some psychologists or therapists, they'll tell you the primary reason behind anger, hate, violence, the root cause is a fear of something. And it may not be fear of gay. It could be fear just because you're different. But like I said, for me, and you're asking a question. So like I said, I can see the point. I don't think all hate speech is homophobic or vice versa. But I guess we don't discuss it because at the end of the day, to get caught up into whether it's homophobic or hate, that is not going to change that person's loved one who just got taken away. That's not going to change a person who is now homeless because their parents put them out. It's not going to change a doctor turning them away, or a shelter turning them away for who they. None of that is going to change, whether it was hate or homophobia. None of it. So
we're coming to the end of the show. So this was a good discussion, but we got to end. We got to wrap this up.
Got places to be. I get
it. I mean, it was good, but I mean, I'm like, they doing a countdown. I was like, Taria's our budget, so I don't need her to come for me.
No. It's being
I gotta keep an eye on that cut. But this was a good conversation. So at the end of the show, we have what is called rest my case. So basically what you're saying is like, you want to rest anything, like either like a phrase, or doesn't even have to be regarding to this topic. It's just like anything you want to lay to rest. So one example that I say is, like one point we were all tired of, I think, hearing the word like lit or something like that, even though I still say it. But we would say, okay, I want the word lit to be gone. Like, I rest my case. I want it to be over. So, Sam, you got to rest my case?
No, I don't.
What?
I don't have one.
No. Taria, you got to rest my case?
I do. So, I know it's Pride Month, and I think I said this during Black History Month. And so, for all the different months, there's Pride Month and Black History Month and Hispanic Month. I hope that one day we don't need just a month to acknowledge each other's differences and celebrate each other's differences, but hopefully one day we can just use the whole year and just talk about the different groups of people and what makes America really great, right? That we are all different and we all have our different views, and we might not look the same, but our blood is still red and our hearts still beat, and we still breathe the same air. And in that same vein, hopefully one day we can sit and have conversations about those differences, and both sides can be open to listen and to hear and to be receptive, right? And it goes even now or even during election season. You know, I have friends that sit on both sides of the aisle and always say, I might not like everything you're saying, but I need to be open and receptive to what's going on so that I can take whatever they're saying and possibly let it be a learning opportunity. So hopefully one day we won't need different months to celebrate. We can just use the whole year.
And Kendra, you have a rest my case?
I guess for me, just whatever your struggle is, be it racial or oppression or your lifestyle, power exceeds nothing without a demand. So if you're not getting involved, if you're not demanding, if you're not having these conversations, if you're not showing up when you're invited at the table, then nothing ever changes, because power doesn't just give it up. You have to demand it. And that's just, and like Terry said, I hope one day society gets to a point to where you don't have to do those things and we can just celebrate each other and our differences year round. But until that time comes, keep demanding, keep showing up.
I do have a rest my case.
Right. Go ahead, Sam.
In honor of Pride Month, right? And I'll use my cousin as an example, and I'm gonna call out some of my family members, okay? So my cousin is a lesbian, and she got married a couple years ago. And some individuals stated they were not coming because they didn't agree with it. And my question is, what weddings do you go to because you agree with whatever's happening? Because there are plenty of weddings that we didn't went to that the children were there before the nuptials. Okay. There were plenty of weddings that we went to that he was married before they started dating. Okay. There were plenty of weddings that we went to knowing that you were going to get divorced, or that he was a crackhead or she was a crackhead, or that y'all both used to do crack. So I'm just trying to figure out, when did we have to start agreeing to go and celebrate people? Stop using that excuse. If you don't want to go, don't go. Okay. But sitting on this high horse, okay, when we can see all them secrets in your closet, no ma'am, Pam. Okay, let it go. Stop doing that. We as a people got to stop. We don't agree with it. Who cares? Did you have to sign a petition to come? No. That was my rest of my case. Sorry.
But she didn't have one though. But she did have one.
Yeah.
Listen, I thought about that. That has been on my spirit. And I don't care if my family sees it, because I didn't everybody.
When the spirit moves you, you just gotta let it out. So my spirit moved her, and it had to come out.
My rest my case is I actually have one, because I'm usually the one that don't have one. So I actually have one, and we're gonna end up talking about a lot of the Texas laws upcoming very soon, because we will have some legislatures, couple of legislatures on our show, which is a good thing. But I did have a conversation with one of them. And one thing, I don't necessarily know if it's a rest my case, but more like maybe a PSA. So I had a conversation with one I'm really close to. And one thing that she said, because we do have a platform, and I am grateful for this platform, that we need to get the word out and use our platform. Because if you are a resident of Texas, they're coming from us regardless if you are a female, and if you are a minority, or if you are not in the conservative, they're coming for us.
They look at you all the same.
Right. So the bills that are passed, they're coming for us. The reason for that is because a lot of them will be passed, and because a special session is coming up, because the Democrats or the minority. We need to vote. You need to be registered to vote. You need to get out and vote. Everybody want to vote for the presidential election. President election don't help you on a local level. We need to vote. This is an attack. Like, I have issues with a lot of these bills that are coming down, and to me, it disgusts me. And I'm angry.
Some of them are voter suppression laws as well. So.
Voter suppression. I'm the anti-abortion bill. Like, you know, even the one with the gender regarding the children, like though the gun laws. I mean, gun you're giving them, like, now you don't have to have a permit to have a gun. And I am gonna say I want my $25 back because I had to renew my permit. I want my money back. But a lot, you know. And so we know why it's being done. It could be motivated by money. It could be motivated by people want to run for president because they want these particular followers, whatever the case may be. But we need to use our platform and continuously, I want people to vote. I want you to register to vote.
In every election.
Because I just, you know, became a Houston resident soon. So I have to switch over my residency from Dallas County to Harris County. So I'm going to start an initiative. Y'all need to come register with me. If you are not registered to vote, let's register to vote together.
Y'all better flip this before I start saying I identify as a white male, okay?
Right.
No, but just the, you know, all elections, like you said, whether it is the PTA, local dog catcher, your local politicians influence your life a lot more than the national politicians do. So state, local, city, all levels.
All day.
Well, Kendra, where can our listeners follow you? On Instagram, Facebook, what social media?
Oh, good. So I have taken a break from the good old Facebook for a little bit.
Always a good thing.
Yeah, you know, just ways. But when I am back in about a few weeks, you can follow me on Facebook at I am Krissa, and same thing on Instagram, I am Krissa. You can follow Pride Houston at www.pridehouston.org or on Facebook at Pride Houston. Same thing with the Montrose Center, www.montrosecenter.org. And then for Lesbians of Color, at We Are LOC, and that's on every platform, WEARE LOC. So that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Sam, are we following you today?
Yes, you're gonna follow me to the polls because I normally forget my Instagram. So you can follow us on Twitter, NFQ Pod.
And Taria, are they following you?
Yeah, I always let people follow me. Thank you so much, Ms. Kendra, for coming on, being a guest on our show. And if anyone wants to talk with us more, DM me, Simply Being T on Instagram.
We're about to get some hate mail, but thank you, Kendra, for being on the show. Because I've learned a lot. I learned a lot. I'm not well educated or well versed in the LGBT.
You know what? I will say, I wish people would judge less. So hopefully not too much hate mail and more dialogue.
Girl, they may come for us. It's fine. We need to be relevant. We need some more viewers. We got goals out here.
Well, put this one out there. I'm pretty sure everybody has an opinion.
They gonna come for us. They gonna come for us when we talk about when we start talking about these laws. We fine. You can follow me at Brain_Janae, and as always, you can follow No Further Questions on Instagram at No Further Q, and on Facebook at No Further Questions. And like Sam said, follow us on Twitter at NFQ Pod. So until next time, we're out.